Hello, everybody. Today I have a very dear soul sister with us. Her name is Leah Morris, and she is the force behind LifeRemade.com. She is a relationship transition coach. Thank goodness we've been practicing this for about a minute because I kept stuttering on the concept. And she's going to tell us more about what it is that she does and why she does it. But she is a wealth of information on how to move from one relationship status to the next. So welcome to our group, Leah.
Thank you so much. I love how you put that to one relationship status to the next, because I think that it's not just about moving from one relationship to the next, but like there is a process, going from single to engaged to married to divorced to separated, even to divorced. And there's really just so many steps along that way. And that's kind of why I like to focus on relationship transitions as the main area of focus for my coaching.
Because let's see who came up with this system where we go through transitions in life and we get no help whatsoever. I mean, up until recently, I'm so happy that now there's a new breed of coaches like you that help us to navigate this process, because up until now it was good luck. I mean, there is no roadmap, there is no GPS, just do whatever you think it's right. Maybe you'll have the help of your friends and family, which then again, they're no professionals, so God bless them, but they may get you even deeper in the hole. So please explain to us how it is that you are able to help us go through those dark nights of the soul.
Yeah, it's exactly like what you said. Like, I mean, I've gone through my own divorce. And so I came to this career choice as a result of the lack of support that I received during my own relationship transition and transitioning from that divorce. And so, it's like you said, we have our support system. And oftentimes, bless their souls, they can get us into deeper trouble. And I think it's because they were basing our decisions on that at that point off of what everyone else is saying and that external input, rather than looking at what is it that I need to do for myself? What is it that I want? What is it that I value that's important to me? And that's kind of where I found myself when I was coming out of my own divorce was, when you get out of a relationship, even if it's just a long-term relationship and it's a breakup, but when you get out of something like that where you've envisioned your whole future with somebody else, you're suddenly left with a giant void before you. And your future, which was planned out with this other person, with all of these ideas and wonderful dreams in mind, is suddenly not there anymore. And you're looking into this void and you're trying to fill space because it's so uncomfortable to see a void. And we can't stand the thought of there being uncertainty. And like, rightfully so, as human beings, we like a certain level of certainty in our lives. But this is where I come in and I say, let's actually pause here and let's actually assess the situation for what it is. And let's allow that void to be empty for now and to look internally and see, where am I missing answers for myself inside? Where are the voids inside of me that I can begin to answer with my own questions or my own answers? I'm sorry. What is it that's important to me? How do I want my future to be looking? If I could choose for myself from here on out and there was no external input, what would be my dream? What would I wish for? Would I wish to travel more? Would I wish to have just a peaceful, simple life? Would I wish to just be loved unconditionally? These are things that I think when we are getting out of a relationship of any kind, they're like the last question that we think to ask ourselves. We tend to ask, what did I do wrong? What am I not getting? What am I lacking? What's missing? How am I not enough? Instead of saying, how can I find my enoughness and my wholeness in this new space too?
I think that the example of the metaphor of the void has just summarized in my head exactly the emotional turmoil that happens with divorce, which is we are facing that void, which is scary as hell. I mean, it's a void, it's a cliff, it's a tunnel, it's all the things that in our imagination are so dark that we, like we said, we don't like uncertainty, we don't like fear, we like our security and our comfort. So we're looking at that, and the first thing that we do is, that blaming, that why is this happening to me? Can I avoid this? Can I just go back and turn around and go back to the misery that I had before? So that's one big emotional thing that we have to deal with before we even start talking to a lawyer. And then second, it's we want to start filling up that void even before we completed the ending of our relationship. And what I see, and I saw it with my own divorce, is like, okay, sure, I'm giving up a lot of things, but this void cannot be that empty. I want to fill it up with, I want as much time with my children as possible. I want as much financial money as possible. I want as many of our friends. So you try to make that void a little bit more manageable. But the reality is that you have to do what you just said, stand in that void, forget all the blame, all the guilt. Let's move forward as to what do you want to fill it up with? And it doesn't have to come from your past. It has to come from that real desire of what it is inside of you. But again, we're going through so much darkness that to do that kind of internal work, I think that you need a guide, like what you do with people. Otherwise, you can get lost in the process.
100%. I think that's what ends up happening. That's kind of what ends up happening when and I won't speak for everyone on this, but in the majority of the clients that I work with, I find that when they've arrived at the end of their relationship, I hear all the time, I lost myself. And in fact, I don't even know what I want. I don't even know who I am. And when you're coming out of that with that lack of rootedness and that not knowing where your center is, adding lawyers and adding, all these other things can be really almost dangerous, because everybody has a different intention, right? And if we can't come back to like, does this feel right for me? Is this looking right? Is this feeling okay? I think it's really difficult to end up in a place at the end of our divorce feeling like, I think I handled that the best way I could. And I feel really proud of that. And so it does take sometimes a coach or somebody who is really giving you full permission to listen to yourself, to trust yourself again, to sort of live in this new idea that I'm not lost. I just didn't pay close enough attention before. And once we find that center again, and once we maybe have that support, that coach, or even a therapist, I had a therapist and a coach through my divorce. Once we can come back to our center and come back to that place of, I think that I can manage these waves because I'm so deeply rooted in myself, then we can look at the void in front of us and say, that's not so scary after all, because I know where I am. I know that I'm standing with my own 2 feet on the ground. I can, if lawyers come in and they're pointing me in the right direction, I will know what that sounds like. I will know what that feels like. I can handle, not being guilt tripped or being obligated by my ex or something like that. That's the really typical thing when you're going through divorce too, is we like to think that we can handle something so painful in the most loving way possible. But with all these moving parts and the legalities, and if children are in the picture, it can get very, very messy. And the adding of more voices into that, which is extremely helpful. And I mean, I would even be considered an extra voice as a coach. You got to make sure those people that are sitting at your table are giving you the kind of information and the kind of guidance that feels right for you. So I don't know if that answers the question at all, but I feel like it kind of went all over the place.
But I like what you are saying, because ultimately I do believe that we have full control over our divorce. No matter how combative our ex is, no matter how sharky our lawyer is, how opposed to this whole thing our family is, we do have the power to say this is going to go in one direction or another. But I often find my clients come to me and they either finish the divorce process and they're traumatized as hell, and they look back and they go, well, that was a shit show. Or they are in the process of divorce and they're letting other people hijack the process. And I sometimes have to go with all the compassion and all the love in the world and say, but you're allowing this, you're the one that either doesn't have the right team to start with, or it's subconsciously or consciously saying, I don't have the power to handle all of this. So here, lawyer, you do whatever you want to do. And I had this client recently who said, my lawyer wanted me to send this really aggressive letter saying that he can't see the children anymore. They're in the separation process. And I just went ahead with it by knowing that he was going to take it really badly. And now he's threatening with something else. And I had to sit with her and say, look, I know that we feel intimidated by lawyers sometimes, but you knew, your gut was telling you this is not a good move. You have all the power to go to your lawyer and say, look, I don't think this is the right strategy. I know it may be my rights. I know that you may think it's best, but I need to have a second opinion, or my gut is already telling me, no, this is not happening. And that's why I sometimes think that we need the extra support, because we don't feel empowered enough to say, look, what do you want out of this?
Totally. And there's this, I just recently learned about this concept of collaborative divorce. I think a lot of lawyers are beginning to step into this idea that we don't have to do things the way it's always been done before, where divorces are aggressive attacks on our ex-spouses. Maybe we can do this differently so that we don't end up having children who are in the midst of this, finding themselves just being pawns in this, this breaking apart of their home, and then going through the cycle again of like, oh, I'm finding myself in a divorce. That's kind of where I found myself, was through my own parents' divorce, was this very different idea of what divorce actually was. And so there was a lot of shame and a lot of guilt when I experienced my own divorce, being a child of that, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. And like you said, one, it's definitely trusting your gut, having people who are going to help guide you to trust your gut more. And two, like maybe, getting a second or third opinion. There isn't just one path to what you're hoping for. And I think setting an intention is something that's really huge that I encourage my clients to do at the beginning. Like, okay, this is going to get crazy messy. It could, all kinds of emotions are going to go into this. How do you want to look back on this and say that you showed up as, right? How do you want to look back and say, you know what, I feel proud of the way that I did that. What's the feeling that you want to have standing at the end of this? That way they can always sort of point their ship in that direction, no matter what waves are coming. Obviously, I like a lot of metaphors.
Oh, I speak in metaphors all the time. Okay. Like the Bible. It's like, woman, just say what you want to say. I love what you were saying about, crap, I lost my train of thought. There were two things that I loved. One, that what you were saying about the children of divorce, because the main reason why I did this is I have my own campaign of Save the Children, which right now I know that is trending and it's for sex trafficking, but for me, it's for divorce conflict. And my own childhood was pretty traumatized by the divorce process with my parents. They stayed together for 10 years and eventually happened what had to happen, and it was horrible. So when I found myself in a marriage that wasn't by any means bad, it was just that I was done. We've been together for 15 years. We did what we had to do. I was terrified of, well, I can't do that to my children, but I didn't realize that it was the old school divorce and the new divorce. My parents, they didn't have all the options that we have nowadays. And this is what I want people to recognize. You can choose what kind of divorce you're going to have, because it's not what used to happen, that you had one lawyer handling the whole process. Nowadays, if you don't want, you don't even need a lawyer. You have the option of having collaborative divorce, where are those lawyers that are prepared to work with your partner, to work with the mediators. In my opinion, there should be another concept. There should be divorce, which is what explains when two people can't even see each other anymore. And there should be the word called co-divorce, which implies, yes, our marriage ended, but we're proud of what we did. Our divorce is something that actually taught us skills. They taught us how to speak to each other, how to communicate consciously, how to listen, how to negotiate. I mean, I think that divorce can be one of the most positive transformations of our lives, but still, I feel that only women like you and I that went through it, that look at the void and said, okay, this is going to be horrendous, but we're doing it because some sort of light was calling us at the end of the tunnel. We know that now. But I feel that there are so many women at that cliff that keep going back and say, no, I won't do this for the children, or I won't do it because I don't know if I'll be okay. And it just breaks my heart to see all those childhood shatters and all those women and men that are living miserable lives just because they think, oh, this is going to be the worst thing of my life. And I talk to people about the children of non-divorce, those children that grew up in marriages that say, no, we're not going to do this. I want to, and I put this announcement out there very often, I want to have one of those humans that grew up in a horrible marriage come and say publicly, I am so happy that my parents sacrificed their happiness and they were in a miserable, toxic environment so I could have some sort of messed up childhood. I really want one person to do that. And I haven't found anybody. So I think that we really need to start looking at, there is a new way of divorcing. There is a way where you can have a relationship transformation. No.
Transition,
that's the one. Transition coach, when you can have a mediator, financial advisor. There are many possibilities, but it's not the dark path that it used to be.
Yeah. And that's such a hard thing to recondition ourselves to believe, is because it's deep, right? This has been going on for generations and generations. And I think the work that you're doing and spreading this messaging and the work that I feel called to do as well, which is simply presenting another way, right? There's another way that we can go about this. The way that I like to go about it with my clients is clarity, simplicity, right? Let's get rid of all of the fog that comes along with divorce and comes along with the ending of the contract of marriage, right? And let's add clarity to that. And then I think in order to get to that clarity, we have to start making space in our lives. So getting rid of like negative thought patterns, self-sabotaging behavior, fears, doubts. A lot of what comes with divorce is very, it takes up a lot of space emotionally, mentally, I mean, sometimes even physically. But I think in order to really see the light at the end of that tunnel, we have to be willing to clear that lens for ourselves and look at what's not working anymore. Right? What did I choose in order to arrive in this place now? And do I want to keep choosing that? And if not, how do I remove it from my life? Right? How do I begin to process that out in a healthy way? So a lot of times we distract ourselves, and we're distracting ourselves because we're so uncomfortable with the uncertainty of leaving a relationship. So people end up, like you say, in these miserable relationships for the rest of their lives. And their children only have that as an example of what marriage is. And it's not doing anybody any favors, right? We have one life. So enough with the distractions. Let's ask ourselves the deeper questions. Why am I choosing this? Right? How am I a co-creator of the life that I'm living now? And is this the life that I want to keep living for the rest of my life and that I want my children to keep living through? And if it's not, how do I choose differently? It sounds like very simple questioning, but these are questions that people will run from like their house is on fire, right? They do not want to face the truth of themselves. And that's where coaches come in, and therapists as well. We help guide you back to what's the truth, and asking yourself those deeper questions. Those can be really scary to answer on our own. And so having somebody there who is in full support of whatever you arrive at is really, really healing, and can help give you that clarity and that, seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. Because I think for you and I don't want to speak for you, but I can get a sense of you just in this short conversation. My divorce is the best thing that ever happened to me.
I said the same.
Okay. Yeah. So, and it's from this point on the other side, standing in the light, we can say, we knew this light was here and we were right. And so we can yell back and we can be like, trust yourself. It's here. I'm standing in it. But it's like, what we need to do is actually go back, grab someone's hand and say, come on, I know the way out. I'll walk with you. I'll walk with you to the light. And that's the difference between, I think, a coach and a therapist is, coaching is very interactive. It's very much of a team feel. And that's why I love what I do so much, is I sort of go into these darker shadows with people and I gently guide them out.
Which is a very important distinction that you're making between coaching and therapists, because I have people that come to me and say, well, but I have a therapist and I'm already working on my issues or my traumas or whatever. And I said, that's fantastic. But I also see the work of a coach as a different strategy. It's more like moving forward, it's having the space to hold for emotions and feelings that very often, yeah, maybe a therapist can help you with, but somebody who's gone through a divorce, who has learned the techniques on this is how we face this is how we move forward. It's what you were saying. We are just holding your hand. It's not that we're some superhuman or that we have found some magic wisdom. It's basically that we just did it, and now we want to go back and, like you said, just say, here, come with me. I see people hiring a fitness coach. Why are you hiring a fitness coach? He's just going to tell you to do push-ups. But he tells you to do the push-ups and he shows up there with you. So that's what we do. We go there and go, I know this is uncomfortable, but let's do it. And if you need to cry, you cry, because that's something that I remember feeling with my divorce. And it was, I did have a coach, and that was my saving grace. But I also had a whole bunch of friends and family who were trying to help. And again, God bless them. I will be forever grateful. But thank goodness I didn't use any of their advice, because first of all, they made me feel really uncomfortable. I couldn't share my emotions. People are not trained to sit in the pain of another person. It's really, really uncomfortable. They try just to make you look on the bright side. At least you have your children, at least. And it's like, no, I need to process all this. It's so important that we don't let any of the negative energy of divorce stay in our bodies. And again, a professional coach was the one that I was able to say, look, I can tell you the truth. I feel like shit, and let's talk about it. Whereas with my friends, it was always like, no, I'm doing great. It's so great. It's fantastic. And then next day, yeah, but we're divorced. Well, I couldn't tell you while I was going through the process, because you kept telling me. And this is something as well that I want people to hear. And I share this with my private coach, with my private clients. And it's that very often people will giving you the advice that they're just saying to themselves. Like, I found people that were telling me, stay in your marriage, he's a wonderful man, you're never going to find a better one, because that's what they're saying to themselves, to stay in their marriages. And they weren't able to hear anything else when I was telling them, yes, he doesn't beat me up, he's not an alcoholic, he's a wonderful father, but I am not in love with him. Suddenly that wasn't part of the equation. Suddenly that was not important. And I was like, wait a minute, this is life. Like you said, I have one life. I want to live it to the fullest. And if that means I have to break a contract, I'll break a contract. I'll break all the contracts in the world. I mean, this is our chance to really rise up. And I'm seeing so many women, especially, getting to the point where they say, yeah, I know there is more. So I'm just going to transition. Now I just need the help to transition. What are the techniques that you help people when they have this mental block of, I don't need a coach. I have good friends, I have a therapist, a coach is just something unnecessary?
I think that, I like to believe that when people are ready for a coach, they will feel the pull. And maybe this is something that you can look for if you're wondering if you're looking for a coach, if you're ready for a coach. You have to be willing to change, because coaching is about transformation. It's about change. It's about movement and progress and growth, right? So therapy and counseling, like I said, so helpful, so healthy, so wonderful, fantastic. But I heard this metaphor when I was getting my certification in coaching, and I think it really made things clear for me about the differences. If you have someone who's stuck in a hole, a therapist might walk by and they look down and they say, explain to me where you're at and let's talk about it. Right. So that's more of like a therapy aspect, is I'm going to hold space while you understand your current situation and while you begin to come to presence. A counselor, which I would consider a little bit more like a friend, who they're going to instruct you like, okay, look for this, look for that. Maybe these are the ways that you can begin to take different action potentially. A coach is going to walk by and put a ladder down, climb down there, grab you by the hand and say, I've been in this hole before. Ask me any questions you want to know, but I'm going to help you get out. I'm not going to leave you down here. So it's a little I mean, it's a lot more about movement. Like, let's get you out of the hole. How about that? And like, I'm going to come down there and help you. So I think that if you're ready to change, which a lot of times that hole can be very comfortable, and we need to stay in that hole a little bit longer in order to understand that we're even in the hole. But when you see that you're in the hole and you look up and you see that there's light above and you don't know how to get out, but you really, really want to, that's when you would hire a coach. But you have to be willing to do the work too. A coach isn't somebody that's going to, you know, pull you out. They're going to be down there with you while you get out together, right? While they sort of talk you through all of these processes and things that, I know you're having doubts right now. I know you're having these thoughts. I've been down here too. Like, have you thought of things this way? It's a lot more interactive, but it's all based on movement.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about we'll get down there with you because we've been there before. So from my personal experience, I can now speak from a very compassionate place to my clients, to those who are in this group. I think that one of my mission is to educate people, just to say, look, this is the process, these are the emotions of divorce, and this is how we handle them. From your own experience, having gone through divorce and coming out to the other side way happier, if you were to look back and say, hey, I got some advice for you, what would you say to the Leah before the divorce?
It's funny because I'm so different than the person that I was. So I don't even think that I would have listened at that time. I needed to go through the process. I think it's like another metaphor. It's like being a caterpillar in your chrysalis and prying the chrysalis open too soon. It's like, I needed to get messy inside of the cocoon in order to come out where I am. But I think the one thing that I hear in my mind and like speaking the loudest right now is you can trust yourself. I think that is the biggest piece of information that I needed to hear. And that I needed to not only hear, but deeply know that I can trust myself. And I think anyone who's listening here, there's a lot of doubt that comes along with going through a process like this, where you're really not sure of what to look for, not sure of, am I doing this right? Like, why does this feel so messy? Why am I so ashamed? Like, all of these questions that are coming up, you can trust yourself. And it's like what you said, I would be willing to go through a million contract breakings in order to arrive at a place where I feel like I'm fully alive. And I think a lot of times we think, and I do believe that love and that marriage can be sacred, but I think that the contract itself is not sacred. I think love is sacred. I think happiness is sacred. I think a deep sense of satisfaction and confidence, those are sacred. And if we're never going to get to those feelings and emotions inside of an unhappy marriage, then break the fucking contract, right? Like, I don't want to come to the end of my life not experiencing what's truly sacred for me because of a written contract.
Yes, exactly. Something that it's filed somewhere in the county records. To me as well, it was very interesting because when I got my divorce, somebody said to me, well, how can you be breaking your vows? Those are sacred. And I said, wait a minute. In my vows, I never said that I would remain married. And that was something that I said to my husband, my now ex-husband, and I said to my fiance, because I'm getting married again, and I said, you will never hear me say until death do us part. That's not part of my contract. But I do promise to love you forever in the best of my capacity. That contract is still current with my ex-husband. I still love him. I just don't choose to wake up next to him every day. We have different views on how we want to live life. That's it. But he's still a very important part of my life. He's the father of my children, and I'm going to try and respect and honor him as much as I can. Now, this may sound like a very lofty concept. That doesn't have to be what you go after. But I also think that we have a commitment and a contract that maybe we don't say in our vows, in our wedding, but it's to love ourselves. And I love myself enough to say, you know what, even if it goes against society's norm, which at this point, that's all it is, because we can legally break the contract. It's not even like we're doing something illegally. illegally. It's just that it's morally still sort of dubious, because I also think that it's changing, and now it's becoming even more morally unacceptable to stay in an unhappy marriage than going ahead with your divorce. But I say that, I say, like, I still have a commitment to myself and to my children, and for that, same thing, I will move mountains to make sure that I fulfill that vow.
That's something that I love that you are showing your children through example too, is we're taught that marriage is the ultimate, right? That's what we're going for, that kind of commitment to somebody else. And it's like, what happens to our commitment to ourselves? Why is that never talked about? Why is that not encouraged? Or why don't we have Pinterest boards full of the different ways that we're loving ourselves and committing to our own dreams, right? All of these hopes and dreams and vision boards of, the ring we'll have and the dress and stuff. It's like, what about the relationship to the person? What about the relationship to ourselves? What about the way we feel deep down inside? Are we taking care of ourselves? So I love that you said that. That should be part of the vows. I vow to, be in a relationship with this person, and to deeply care for their happiness, but not at the expense of my own well-being. Like, how about we add an addendum to the contract? Because that's so important. That's the most important. Nobody's going to benefit from an unhappy wife, an unhappy mother, an unhappy friend, an unhappy daughter. Like, that needs to be number one.
That's what my catchphrase for my business is. They say, I married for love because I love this man, but then I divorced for love because I love myself and I love my children, and I didn't want them growing up in an example where I'll repeat it until I go blue in the face. There was no overt conflict. We never scream at each other. As a matter of fact, my children to this day will say, why did you guys divorce? But I was not loving myself. It wasn't until I hit the divorce process that I went, okay, who are you? What are you doing here? What's happening? And then I started loving myself. And then from that place, now I'm able to love another man without losing myself in the process. So I know that if I were to divorce again, I will not have that void. I will just have a part of my life that is being removed, and I keep on walking along, because now I'm coming from a very different experience, which is something that I also like to stress to people when they say, I'll never find love again. And I say, no, we all find love again if we want to. Yes, there are examples of people that say, you know what, that was freaking complicated, I'm not doing it again. But for others like myself, it was like, I had a beautiful marriage. It was a beautiful love story. It simply ended. And I made sure that the ending was just as beautiful and I was as proud of as the marriage. And that to me is the ultimate success. It's not that I died and I'm gonna be buried next to him. I don't give a damn about that. I am so happy that I managed to have that relationship and that divorce. And now I'm into the next relationship. So talk about transition in relationship. That's the beauty.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, I love that deep honor for every decision along the pathway. It's so beautiful, and the reason why you will always find love, I think, is because you love yourself so deeply, and you can never be separate from love. So it's not even a matter of finding it; it's just knowing that it's always there.
Oh, I love that ending. We're gonna leave it on that because that was just so beautiful. But guys, if you want to hear more from Leah, she's so inspirational. I was on her Instagram yesterday, and you had that beautiful meditation with, you were on some lakes. I don't know, where are you?
I'm in Northern California.
Yeah. I've been in Mammoth Lakes just a couple of months ago. And oh my gosh, that place is so beautiful. And she had this beautiful meditation with her beautiful voice. And actually, you were reading an excerpt, but go to her Instagram page, go to liferemade.com. I'm gonna put all the information below. But seriously, you need this guiding hand, and you need somebody who is this beautiful soul, who's done it, who is willing to be there with you, and who's gonna make the process easier. So do you have anything else that you would like to share with my group before we go?
No, I'm really thankful to be part of this. This feels like really cool. You're doing amazing work, Olga, and to anyone who's listening, I hope that this community is, serving you, and you're getting the nourishment you need to come out on the other side of this.
Yes, we'll be cheering on the other side.
Yes, exactly.
I said that I want to start the new divorce awards where people will get an award for having a beautiful divorce.
Yes, I love that.
I'm gonna invite the winners to Maui. Come and celebrate once the world goes back to normal. Thank you so much for your time, beautiful, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks.
Take care.